You want to take them to places where they're uncomfortable, but to do that, you must make yourself uncomfortable. Take them camping, because in the camping, everybody gets responsibility. We start
Mm.
making food on a fire. Um, in fact, a lot of kids start loving that. But you create new experiences. And there's wonderful things like in end of April, my wife and I go on another 4 day hike the Lost Coast, and there's a whole group, and there's young people that sometimes come with their parents,
Amazing.
and so we carry our packs and it's heavy gear, 45 pounds. You set your tent up, you make food, but you got this most fantastic new experience, and that's where you really learn new things.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Truehope Cast, the official podcast of Truehope Canada, where we take a deep dive into mental health's many physiological and psychological aspects. This is the show for you if you're looking for motivation, inspiration, knowledge, and solutions, and that's what we are all about here at Truehope Canada. And Truehope Canada is a mind and body-based supplement company dedicated first and foremost to promoting brain and body health through non-invasive nutritional means. For more information about us, please visit truehopecanada.com. Today, I welcome Dr. Henry Venter to the podcast. Now, Dr. Venter is a licensed clinical psychologist and professor of psychology with 25 years of clinical and teaching experience. He is currently the program director for the MA Human Behavioral Psychology program and professor of psychology at National University. Dr. Venter's research focuses on the rising mental health issues among young adults, including the increased rates of loneliness and the role of meaning and purpose in achieving happiness and fulfillment in life. His therapeutic approach combines client-centered therapy, CBT, and psychodynamic principles, creating a cohesive and effective method for addressing mental health concerns. Today on the show, we discuss the giving up generation addressing hopelessness among youth. Enjoy the show. Okay, hi Henry, welcome to Truehope Cast. Thank you so much for being with us today. How are you? What is going well?
What is going well? It is turning into fake spring over here. It seems like winter is over. It's like spring is here. But the people in the know around here says it's fake spring. Watch it. It's going to get cold again. And since I'm new, relatively new in the area, I'm not sure. I'll watch out. But I enjoy this week of spring then.
Amazing. Yeah, I hear the word fake spring as well, and I'm not used to that terminology. I'm just used to spring, but this fake spring is something that, yeah, it looks like something we're both going to have to get used to. But that's great. Today we're going to be discussing the giving up generation, addressing hopelessness among youth. But before we jump into that topic, would you mind just letting us letting us know a little bit more about who you are and what it is that you do, please?
All right, I'm a licensed clinical psychologist in the state of California. I've been that since 1996. Originally from South Africa, immigrated to the United States in 1998. And 3 years ago, I also moved out of California into the Smoky Mountains of North Carolina. Then my actual full-time job, I am a professor at National University. I've been there for 20 years. I first was in charge of the online marriage and family therapy program. I actually took the program online. The last 2 years, I am director of a master's degree program called the Masters in Human Behavioral Psychology, the 13-month program, online program we run at National.
Amazing. And what has brought you to the journey to this point where you are going around having conversations about this giving up generation? What's led you to that point?
Since we work with young people that enroll in the university, we are probably were some of the first to pick up, what is happening with enrollments and talk with advisors. What do you hear from people who want to enroll? We started to pick up there that people start questioning, should I even go to university? Should I do undergrad? Should I do master's degree? Is it even worth it? So we started picking up that there is, because they would ask us, what can we give more information? And so it started there. And then gradually we also looked at what else is happening. I then picked up. I was actually in Canada for a conference on this topic where I presented. Where I was there the Friday, the Monday, the attorney, uh, uh, the, the medical report here in America came out. The white paper on loneliness among young people. And so that started a bigger research for me to see, is this just in America? And as I did wider research, I found out, no, this is not just in the United States. This is all over the world, that there is a tremendous rise in loneliness. And it's actually been tracked. So a lot of people said, but it was started with COVID. And I thought, well, let me see. And I was amazed to find that research has shown that this has actually started a couple of years before COVID. The trend started, and we just didn't pick it up. COVID accentuated it. But it's interesting that young people first started feeling lonely, isolated, and then that morphed into this whole idea of giving up on life and not having a clear purpose and goal of for their life.
Interesting. And just to continue the kind of the introduction of this topic, can you maybe explain a little bit what you mean by the giving up generation, and what are some of the key factors contributing to this sense of hopelessness among youth today?
Yeah. So what we hear from young people is that the American dream was always about, which came the capitalist dream and the dream all over the world, that you'll leave school, you'll work hard, you go to college, you'll earn enough money to buy a house and build a retirement, and there will always be, I'm earning enough to one day have a future.
Mhm.
And it more became clear with perhaps due to economic problems the world over, that young people realized, I ended up with so much study debt, the jobs that I get and I get paid is not going to be enough to buy a house. I'll never earn enough to even retire, so I'm not even going to try and work hard. We can just as well stop trying. Another idea was always, well, you can always pick yourself up, and you can make yourself again, you can restart. And a lot of young people started saying that's impossible, it's too hard, taxes are too high. So there's a lot of factors playing into this. I don't think it's something that young people just started doing because they lack the courage. It is a lot to do with what happens socially and in the structure around them, that they looked at, and they started making sums about, will I be able to make a living? For instance, young people started questioning for the first time in our whole cultural history, should we have children?
Mhm.
Isn't it too expensive to have children? Now, when I'm married a long time now, my 40 years plus, and we had children at 20. At that stage, we didn't even question how much children were going to cost. We just had our children.
Yep.
Young people now started working out, says it's unfair. We'll never be able to afford this kid to provide a living because it has become too expensive. And that has become a growing trend, that young people just started losing hope that there is even something, something at the end of the rainbow. They say, well, there isn't even a rainbow. There's
Right.
nothing. So become very dark and depressed. Remember, at the same time, we also tracked and looked at, well, what is the mental health numbers? Now, remember, there has been in the last 50 years tremendous rise in the treatment of mental health, medications, treatments. I mean, as you know, there's about 20,000 mental health apps available now. You can access therapy. So we would think, with all our advances, that our mental health numbers, especially among young people, would have been declined. Well,
Mhm.
Simon, you'd be amazed. It didn't decline. It is rising at an incredible rate. So with the rise in loneliness is also the rise in mental health issues that, in spite of the more treatment, is seemingly not working. The
Mhm.
medication they're using is seemingly not working or not doing what it should, but the numbers is rising, and we have more young people now accessing therapy than ever before. So there is definitely a correlation there in what's happening with young people in the loneliness as well as the mental health issues.
That's really interesting. And I just have to, just in regards to, let's say 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 year olds, that region of individual,
Mhm.
I know quite a few of those people in that age group, and they can barely think past the weekend, let alone marriage, kids, retirement.
That's
So
correct.
when you're talking about the hopelessness of these young people connected to the fact that it's going to be almost impossible for some people to afford a home, to retire at a good age and live those final years enjoying yourself. I can't imagine that that age group is really thinking about those long-term things in the future. I'm 40 now and I've been thinking about them for the 10 years. But when I was 20, there's no chance I'm thinking about mortgages and I'm thinking about marriage and I'm thinking about kids. So I'm just wondering, what's your opinion in regards to the factors that could probably enter the life of these children from, let's say, maybe 11 onwards for a 10-year period, where they're becoming more, let's say, independent from their parents and doing
Yeah.
things outside of the home a lot more. There has to be a conversation around smartphones and social media and how that is a completely unnatural phenomenon that we don't know the long-term ramifications of, giving a 12-year-old a smartphone, access to the internet, access to all these social media platforms that we know are directly linked to depression, anxiety, and all of these things. It's a very, very unnatural platform to be for the brain to be engaged in. So I would just wonder um,
Mhm.
about those long term ideas opposed to kind of what's happening to kids in, let's say, 10 years, between 10 and 20. What's happening to them to lead themselves into a position where they do feel like there's not necessarily no future for them, but I just feel like they don't have the motivation. They don't have the responsibilities like that. I know a lot of people, when I was 15, I had like a paper route and I had a job when I was 15, and
That's right.
I had to contribute to the family, and I might not have enjoyed that every single day, but I certainly enjoyed, that transition into adulthood. And I just wonder now, do you think there are some things lacking with these 20-year-olds that there we were fulfilling that lack 20, 30 years ago?
Absolutely. The we are now discovering that a lot of young people around 20 that arrives at 20 around struggle with poor emotional strength. The A big thing has become emotional intelligence, uh, and not just your IQ, because a lot of them are very smart, but they do lack the tenacity to deal with the pressures of everyday life, because it's a
Mhm.
pressure. Once you leave school, um, you got to make a living.
Yeah.
That you got to go to school. If you go to school, you got to pass. We can't give you a degree for nothing. You
Mhm.
got to pass, and it's not easy. Or if you say I'm not going to go to college, I want to go work. Well, you got to show up every day, and you before somebody's got to pay you. It is simply not easy, and
Right.
it's as if a lot of young people were not aware of that. True, the economic realities of there, it is a bit harder. They hear about these things. But on the other hand, it seems like previous generations were just mentally tougher.
Mhm.
And we are thinking about what what was the difference? You bring up the difference. A big difference is that children at 11, 10, 11 now get a cell phone, but it's not just a cell phone. The problem with the cell phone is to make you stationary. You don't run around with your cell phone while you're playing a game. You sit like I'm sitting here.
Mhm.
Even my job has changed. I sit my whole job from beginning of the day to the end. I sit here. If I don't go do something physically, I'm going to sit here. So young people has become stay. They go in their room where they sit with the computer, or then it came into the cell phones. And I think the lack of being physically active has become a problem. Less young people are involved in sports. I don't know about you, but when I was in school and I got home, I got on my bike and I was out for the whole day.
Yeah.
If we didn't play sports, we were out. I got home at dark. You just you had to compete. Everybody competed in sports, which ultimately teaches you to be stronger. There's rules, you got to follow it. I remember my rugby coach, man, it was like boot camp to go there. And you talk to your dad about it, it's like, yeah, well, you got to make you stronger. You don't get any help there. And I think these things do play a role. The type of lifestyles, the culture that we created for young people all over the world, because it's pretty similar nowadays, that has led to the fact that um, a lot of young people finish high school and then enter the young adult world, and they are just not mentally tough for
Mm.
this world, and they hope that the world. Now, remember, if you're not mentally tough, what we're saying is you have an external locus of control. You know the term locus of control. Internal locus of control basically says I can handle stress and issues, and even if it's tough on the outside, things are not 100%. I can still maintain my north. I can still, have hope.
Yep.
But the external locus of control means there's a weaker emotional strength, and therefore I need the world around me to solve it for me. It needs to be a perfect world. Everything needs to be in line for me to be happy. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, that doesn't happen. That's never going to happen. The world has never been like that. The world is always up and down. Moving into young adulthood, it's like jumping off a boat in the middle of the ocean and then discovering that the ocean is a ferocious place and you got to swim for life. That is, and it's like a lot of them is like, no, somebody's got to rescue me, and that's not going to happen. And I think it's in a sense, it is a shock for a lot of young people, and they're looking for answers. And part of the reaction is, I think we should just give up. We should not even try. We should work 4 days. I mean, you've heard the other day. I read that the interns in Washington, the association representing them, approached Congress to ask for 4 day week. They
Right.
wanted to work less. And people are like, we actually need you to work 6 days a week, not 4 days a week. And but that's a sign of we can't deal with the pressures. So we
Yeah.
need the world outside to change. And the shock is the world outside's not going to change.
Yeah, I remember being 19 and 20 and it being a lot more unfamiliarity, a lot of more unknowns were stepping up. But I felt like my parents and my brothers had done a half decent job in preparing me for those challenges. And it's if you were going to go and do a marathon, or if you were going to do anything that required you to challenge yourself physically, mentally, whatever that might be, you would have some preparation, whether you read books in preparation, or you trained your body physically in preparation,
That's
or
right.
you had a job when you were 15 or 14 working in your dad's shoe factory or doing a paper round. They're all lessons, right? It's all training for the day where you do leave the house and you have to start fending for yourself. And it's a very I think you can get a lot of positives from stepping into the unknown and the unfamiliar. But if you're unprepared, if you're untrained, it will seem impossible, and you will certainly very easily slip into a state of hopelessness, because all you see in front of you is failure. And then you wrap in, let's say, social media incorporated anxiety and depressions.
That's right.
It's
That's right.
incredibly difficult for an individual to galvanize the resources within themselves to get the energy and the motivation to do highly challenging things, be that
That's right.
emotionally or physically. So there has to be an element where we're talking about what's the parental responsibility in getting your kids ready for,
Yeah.
1920 school, or the workforce, and what's the school's responsibility in doing that as well. Like, the school system must have a huge amount of responsibility, because they have kids from 6 years old to 16 or 18 in whatever country
Absolutely.
you might be, and they have 6 to 8 hours a day with kids. Are we Are we not preparing them properly? Are we not integrating education into the experience of going to university or within the workforce? What have you seen there?
Well, this is one of the things we'll look at. Ask a lot of young people that's in school now, in your last 3 years in school, was there ever a course you could take that prepared you for life after school? Talked about young adulthood. Maybe there's a psychology class that a couple of people take, but that's a handful of people. But generally,
Yeah.
school curriculums do just not include these life skills for young people. A lot more can be done to prepare young people for this transition that's going to take place. That what does it mean to transition from adolescence to young adulthood? And what does young adulthood mean? It means you're on the way to become an adult. So a lot of education, a lot of programs can. I'm not saying there's not any of them, but as a rule, there is not enough of that to help prepare young people for what is lying ahead, um, to do proper career planning, because
Mm.
a lot of young people would just kind of push into, well, you should go to college, and they never had a chance probably get more career planning to say, well, you can make a living, even if you don't need to go to college. There's other careers that you can also take. But think about it. A lot of people just land up in college, and we created this thing of an undeclared major, which actually just says somebody shows up at university with no idea what they should do, which is a bad idea. They just show up and then hope they're going to figure out that it's going to work. Somebody like that could have done something else that would be more meaningful.
Mhm.
One of the other things that parents can do, if somebody says, "What should I do now?" I have a kid between 10 and 15, for instance, is uh, put your kid in some organized sports. Go do wrestling, boxing, find a club, taekwondo. The things we were hoping that sports could be that place, but like in America, and my daughter played varsity tennis, but only 20 of the top kids out of a school of 3,000 eventually could play tennis. She
Mm.
was luckily one of them. It became a professional sport pretty soon, and we were new to this. Pretty soon they asked us, who's her coach? She says, well, her mom is her coach. She said, your kid's not going to make it. You need to get a coach. Here's a list of coaches. So we found out that, in order to make it, she had to play in tournaments up and down the valley. We got her a coach that started working with her. It became semi-professional.
Mhm.
Her case, she busted her knee, and the doctor said, this is just out. She can't do that anymore. But that gave us a glimpse on, just a handful. The rest of the kids, there is no sports for them to participate in. Schools can do so much more to create an environment. Well, there's PE, which children generally hate because they get evaluated. Remember, my one daughter had to run around the track in a certain amount of time, and she's not an athlete at all. And
Yeah.
then she started having an asthma attack, and if she doesn't make it, she's going to fail PE, and then you can't even. So they actually got thrown into a hate physical activity. But
Yeah.
so much more can be done. But let's say schools don't do it. Parents should do whatever they can, because you talk about other things like paper route. Well, there are no papers anymore. So how do I get number one? Number two, there are cities, areas where you wouldn't send your kid on their own out to the end of the street. It's so
Yeah.
dangerous. So
That's right.
we have those realities, but if possible, and I know there's economic limitations for a lot of parents, but as far as possible, uh, get your kid to do something physical under a coach, because they learn to push themselves. They learn to follow rules. I
Mhm.
remember years ago, my wife is also a clinical therapist, and she worked with children. Years ago, she worked with probably one of the most difficult children. He would run into our practice. We had a practice together. He would run in, he would do a somersault and then stand on his head on the couch. It was just uncontrollable. These parents were like they couldn't handle this. And one of the things she told him, this kid needs to get into organized sports. I don't care what you do. This kid, you get him. They eventually got him into swimming. And so we could follow. Nowadays, you're friends with people on Facebook. You could follow them. And we could follow through people we know and people who know. Look, here is his picture. He became an ace swimmer in school. Now, swimmers in school, in high school, my other daughter also swam, and they would be at school 6 o'clock in the morning. That's when they started to practice, you know. And you should hear those coaches. I mean, they are terrible. It's like, is this for their look? You guys are training them, but it created a lot of strength in the kids. This kid eventually became a top swimmer in the school team. They broke the school record for a relay, um, and he is now on to university. And part of his healing and recovery was this organized sports that she got him into, and the parents
Mhm.
in it explained to them, this is what he needs, not just home. He needs a place where somebody else can tell him, these are the rules, this is what we push you for, to push himself beyond. Because remember, school, on the other hand, when created a system, especially here in America, where you can pass 12th grade without doing a lot of work. You take lesson and lesson class. In actual fact, it's not a 12th grade. It's a sort of ninth grade that you end up with. You call it 12th grade, but you took all the lesson classes, because the kids
Mhm.
who want to go to school will push themselves a little bit more, take a higher level class or AP class, advanced placement classes. So a large group of kids in 12th grade and think they're prepared, but actually they never pushed themselves at all. The schools just made it easier to get them through. So in the process, I think it all contributed that we have this period where life has become harder. It's become very difficult. It's not easy to make it and to leave school, find a good job that will pay you, and do all the things that you dream to do. It is not easy. But on
No.
the other hand, our children are less prepared, so the gap has become very wide. A lot of young people that is emotionally strong enough, and the demand is very high. And this is why you see a lot of these hope and anger, and they look at politics. Well, politics should be fix it for us, and then that doesn't work out, and then they're angry, and it just leads to more polarization, and then the rise in mental health issues. So parents can do a lot. They
Yeah.
they need to look at what's happening with their kid and realize this just sitting and working with the device is not healthy. They need to create a system when they say, what can we do to get our kid to take more responsibility? Because responsibility is what builds emotional strength. I take responsibility, even if you. I remember when I was in high school, I would do gardens, because a lot of people, ladies didn't have husbands that passed away, widows, and so I found a niche there that I could go mow their lawn because they didn't have anybody.
Yeah.
And I know nowadays you have garden care everywhere, but in those days you had young people.
Yeah.
Anything to help their kid to do more than just sit is very important.
Yeah, you've you kind of bridged a few interesting gaps there with the education system, the parental system,
Mhm.
community, and then you've got the overarching guise of the government that can certainly help support with initiatives and funding to create things such as organized sports and teams and things like that. And just before I'd love to transition into community, because I think that's a
Yes.
hugely important aspect. I think that I've just mentioned this on the show a few times in regards to conventional school systems and how being in school for maybe 15 years, a lot of schools end up kind of killing a lot of creativity and individuality within children, I think, in my opinion. And I think that can demoralize some children and take away a lot of like raw excitement they might have for certain things. You've got, for example, maybe a boy who just all he wants to do is play sports. Basically, that was me at school. All I wanted to do was get outside at break time and play football with my friends. And then I was so excited for PE class. I was so excited for games class. But that was only 3-4 hours of my week, and the rest of it, when I'm sat in the classroom, I could never get super motivated because I needed to move my body much more in order to really feel like I was thriving and feeling really motivated. And that's just me as an example. But I just think that it can be quite challenging for kids when they get to like 15, 16, 17 years of age, when they're thinking about what they're going to do in 2, 3 years within school, when they're very much kind of put into this structure of their educational system, rather than being able to really nourish what's really creative for them individually, whether that is sports or whether that is art or drama or design, or it could be mathematics or English literature, for example. It could certainly be those things, but I feel like we don't pinpoint the really exciting factors that kids really, really love and enjoy. Because at the end of the day, I think that most people, when they find a job that fuels their soul spiritually, it's something that they've always loved and enjoyed, probably from a very, very young age. And it can be very challenging. I'm not blaming the school system. They have very limited resources, limited time, etc. They can't facilitate everyone's individual desires and needs. But I would think that there must be some mechanisms in regards to incorporating education, the home, and the community to be able to help individuals find what it is that they love and they're motivated about, and then do their very best to, certainly turn that into a job and into work. Because it's happened with me. It's happened with so many people I know who have gone through the workforce for maybe 5-10 years, and then they've gone back to something that they actually love. And you can turn so many amazing things into work, into money these days. And it comes from a place of passion. And
that's right.
It's very, very passionate. I think it's a really important word in regards to what's going to motivate and drive you. And I think when kids get to 19 these days, they've got no idea what they're passionate about. Like, I think a lot of them think they're going to be YouTubers or famous Instagram people.
Absolutely. Interesting enough, just to interject there.
Yeah.
They've done a worldwide study on countries, what kind of jobs young people want to do. And in more than half of the countries, they want to become influencers or work. But if you then ask a lot of the young people, well, okay, you want to do this job. What do you want to do it about? Well, no, I don't know. Because they don't know what their passion is. So they see, well, there's something to do, but they miss the whole point.
Yeah.
The whole YouTube influencer phenomena is successful for people who has a passion and talk about something that's authentically them.
That's right.
That's why you see people can start a YouTube channel and it goes nowhere, because it's not authentically the person. There's no passion.
Yeah.
There's no story behind it. So even there, it leads to a lot of despondency and failure, because they try these things and then it fails, and they can't understand why it fails. It's like, well, you need something that you're passionate about. It's not just something which you do and it works. It's an idea, but there's a component missing for some of them.
That's right. You've discussed the importance of community and support systems in addressing youth hopelessness. And can you share some effective strategies for building these systems, perhaps both at an individual level and as a societal level as well?
Yeah, in fact, this is so serious, Simon. I referred to the American Surgeon General, Dr. Murthy. He said that we actually have an epidemic of loneliness and isolation, and he connected it with the fact that where does it come from? And that really, I picked that up. And he said one of the biggest problems is the lack of community. It says they found in a study that, and he has done a tremendous study, that young people now between 15 and 24 has 70% less social interaction with people and friends than 20 years ago. So what we should focus on is not so much the isolation problem, but the fact that it comes from a lack of social interaction. There's no true social interaction. And you're right, the social media has played a role, because a lot of young people think they have, like you and me, you're on Facebook and you have friends on Facebook or followers. You don't even know the people. I get 170 people on Facebook after I called it to say, do I know these people? And there's still a lot that I don't even know. So are they really my friends? So you can be duped in thinking that following people online and interacting, that you have interaction. That's not interaction. You are just a spectator. And this has become one of our modern problems, that social media has turned a lot of people into spectators. They just read, they consume, but they don't actually interact or make any new connections. But it takes up an inordinate amount of time.
Mm.
And in eventually, because people are misery seeks company, as they become more isolated, more depressed, they are more prone to read negative news, and they follow negative news. Uh, but they still remain spectators. So, and this has become one of our biggest problems, is that the lack of social interaction. So, one of the issues that came up is, well, in that young adulthood period, we need to make, build relationships. So what will we do? Well, let's build an app. And so dating apps has become tremendous. Now, working with clients, I get a lot of firsthand information how these dating app works. And it is a minefield. Do not think you're going to make just connections over it. I mean, one of the guys, he divorced not 2, 3 years ago. Eventually, they got him to go on the dating app. And all he got was people who had said, "Hey, I was on my way to meet you, and my car broke down. Can you just send me $70?" and so that led him to be so despondent. He said, "Henry, how am I
Mm.
going to meet anybody?" He wants to make social interaction because the world has become very difficult. In The culture is not there, built around social interaction. If you take, for instance, one of the uh, big areas of social interaction used to be church. Well, as you know, worldwide, going to church has just plummeted.
Mm-hmm.
Now, don't look at it from a religious viewpoint. Look at it as a human connection view. People would go there and meet each other. So now less and less people go there. So where do they go? So there's less and less places where young people can interact with other people, and that becomes the focal point. So parents should make sure that when they deal with their kids, especially between 15 and 24, is to evaluate what is their social interaction. Do they have friends? Do they have interaction with their friends? Do
Mm-hmm.
they do things together with their friends? Uh, if not, it's a clear indication that that young person is not on a healthy path. And so it's very important. And then to help them, to say, well, can we help you to do something with your friends and plan something with your friends? But that is one of the most important things. And I don't think it's just for 15 to 24. From clients I work with, I find out even older people has the same problem. Where do we actually socially interact with other people? Are we becoming a society that just becomes isolated, living uh, in the internet, and just remain spectators? Or how do we break this hold and change what we have? Well, the first thing is we need to understand what the problem is and get insight, which is why we have these talks, is to develop insight that let's try to begin to understand what's happening here.
I'd love to just touch on the spirituality aspect, if you don't mind, because I think
Yeah,
I
sure.
think it's hugely important. I think that what you said in regards to, don't think about it as, you don't have to necessarily think about it as church or religion or God, whatever it is, but it's a massively important communal space that for hundreds of years people have joined to come together to talk. And just imagine when we were living in much smaller communities, and every Sunday that would be a place where people would come together to be with other human beings. And that's obviously a hugely important part of being a human being, is looking other people in the eye and sharing
Yes.
stories and sharing sad stories and sharing laughs. It's all massively, massively important. And I've certainly seen that dip that you're talking about in the attendance for church. But I think in recent years, in the past couple of years, I know locally in our church here that more and more younger families are coming in and joining. And I don't think it's necessarily I don't think it's exclusively about spirituality and having a connection with a higher power. I think it's about coming together with the community and having
Yes.
having this group of people is going to be there, like this every Sunday at 9 o'clock. There's going to be dozens and sometimes hundreds of people there, coming there for a very positive reason. And I've seen a lot of younger families coming into church, and I think that requirement for spirituality and connection is people are recognizing that that's a part of their life that they need to have. And
Yes.
joining a church and going to a church on a regular basis is a very simple and easy way to do that. And
Yeah,
traditionally,
absolutely.
we've seen it do incredible things. And yeah, I think that what do you think about this connection with the youth, loneliness, and a lack of spirituality within themselves as individuals and within the family? Because we mentioned the word passion. And
Yes.
passion is a very interesting word. Where does that passion come from? Does it come from inside? Does it come from outside of us? Does it come from a higher power? And if we don't have that, we are not complete, I guess.
Yes. I think that the issue of not going to church, like, less people go to church, the loss of faith is playing a big role in people not finding their passion. Because uh, if you say, I don't need that, then all right, and who are you? How do you define yourself? Where do you come from? In order to know where I'm going, I need to have an idea where I come from. If I don't even know where I come from, and then how do I know where do I want to go? Faith, religion has always played a tremendous role. There are some very healthy aspects around faith, helping people to find out who they are. Because remember, that's part of that. We talked about the 15 to 24. Your whole goal, your and task is to determine who you are. You need to build identity to what we call identity for closure to find out this my identity, and then in the 24s up, you need to use that identity to connect to other people. So a large part has to do with finding out who you are. I think faith can play a tremendous role, apart from the fact that it creates a great community. Faith can play a tremendous role in helping me determine who I am and also coming to grips with who I am. Because remember,
Mm.
finding out who I am between 15 and 24 is also coming to grips with who I am not. What do I have? What do I have not? I realize I'm not a genius. There's other people with geniuses. I realize I'm not the next best new sports star. So I come to grips with my limitations, but I also have to discover my potential that I have. Otherwise, I enter that period of young adulthood very depressed,
Hmm.
very unaware of the fact that I do have qualities. Faith, spirituality, religion had played a big role in helping people find out that they do have worth and they do have quality. And I think without that, they'll miss out on something that they now need to discover, and they have no way to discover that. And so the other thing apart from faith is community can be grand. There's a lot of nonprofits who does great work, encourage young people. All right, we don't have paper trails anymore that you can go sell newspapers and all of that, but there, if you can play sports in, at a young age in a valuable nonprofit organization, because that creates community, and nonprofits always look. I had a
Hmm.
client a while ago. She was working, she's in school, and she was working at the animal shelter, and she's spending a whole week at the animal shelter studying how people. She started loving it. It seems like she's going to make it a career, and it was just excellent idea uh, of finding a place where I can find meaning and purpose. And they needed volunteers, and she started volunteers like cleaning kennels, and then she started this and that. And I encourage young people to do that. You don't need to be alone. Don't sit and yeah, and I'm not knocking the internet. The internet is important, and a lot of the technology is fantastic. It's a great development. But what we need to protect against are the elements of technology and social media, in particular, that seek to maximize the amount of time that young people are spending online at the expense of social interactions. I balance these things, but how do I balance it? Get involved nonprofits, get involved in church, whatever your religion is, because that's going to lead to more connection. But we need to start maximizing social connection, that people can feel they belong. because where I feel I belong, I want to spend more time there. I'm drawn to spend more time there. And ultimately, it makes me feel better about myself and life if I feel I belong to a group, to someone. We are, in a sense, have a herd mentality. We cannot survive on our own and in isolation.
Beautifully said. And I think there's so much to be said for faith in something coming towards you, whether you have the idea of a perfect job or an actual object. I think that being able to have faith in something, in a higher power. I not necessarily think people have to believe that there's a dude in the sky with a big white beard, but to have that
Oh,
faith in something outside of us, and leaving it up to that power to bring it towards us in a kind of way that we can't predict. I think I've seen that work for myself personally. I've seen it work for a lot
yes,
of other people.
absolutely.
And there's a lot of power with that. And there's actually some incredible books out there, some incredible individuals, probably some incredible podcasts about how you can actually get in towards that power and use that for yourself. And I think that could be a very useful tool for a lot of people kind of struggling with that
Absolutely.
in that time. And I'd love to talk to you about something that I'm experiencing within my family. And I've got a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I'm thinking about when they're 15 years of age. And I love the historical stories of rites of passage from childhood to adulthood, and how traditionally, these boys would be trained to hunt, to fish, to make fire, and then they would have this transition into adulthood by going out into the forest and taking care of themselves for days or weeks at a time, and coming back and having ceremony around the fact that they've
That's right.
survived with the challenge, with the tools that they've been given, and the teachings. And they come back and they are now a man, and they actually have a role and responsibility with that in the community that comes with overseeing those challenges. And it's a very difficult thing to incorporate in 2025. And I think about how I can do it, and what I'm going to do with my kids. And I'm very fortunate, I live in Canada. I'm from the UK. I lived in Sweden for a long time, and that's where my elder brother lives. And he has a child as well who's 4 years old. And my brother in the UK has got a 4-year-old as well. So my plan is to, when they're 14, 15 years of age, is to kind of send them off to these foreign places and live without the family, and live without their comfortability and their usual surroundings, and be embraced in a new environment. And I remember when I was like about 10 years of age, and my brother would do an exchange program with a French student, where a French guy would come and live with us for a couple of months, and my brother would go and live with his family, and they would just do this exchange. And I think that's an incredibly positive way
Absolutely.
to step out of the comfort zone, and
Yes.
also, as a parent, let go somewhat in regards to the control that we want to have over our kids to keep them safe. But
Yeah.
we have to know that, there's going to be a time coming soon when they're 18, 19 years of age, where your job as a parent to teach them what you can teach them to go out into the real world is done. And I just wonder what your thoughts about that were, like at that age, the rites of passage, and how vital travel is for kids, not necessarily to
Absolutely.
go when they're 19 to go and travel to Thailand and party for a month or whatever, but to actually go to a new place and live there and work there, and be incorporated into a completely new society and community, and what that can do for you as a human.
Absolutely. There's two things that you talk about here that can help a child develop increased emotional strength that prepares them for when they leave adolescence. And that's new experiences with increasing responsibility. So your job as a parent is to create these new experiences. Because a lot of what we have currently, especially built around, the internet, is very boring. It's actually very the same. A lot of people say, well, there's so much to stream. I'm actually bored because it's the same over and over.
Yeah.
And you can just sit behind your computer. And so that's why they create new things to draw attention. Our job as parents should focus on how can I create new experiences. Start at a younger age where you send them off for, and this where camps has always been part of the American culture, for instance, and I think in other areas as well.
Yeah.
But it's become very expensive for people. It's only been drawn down to a couple of days, where it used to be much longer. But that was the idea: is that the kid goes out for new experiences over summer at a camp, where they are now part of a bigger group with responsibility, and that's the idea, to build up more and more of that, to the point where you can send them, for a couple of weeks, couple of months, to a whole other area, because it's new experiences that stimulate the mind to develop. Because with new experiences come responsibility, and so the more you pick up responsibility, the more you grow emotional strength. So you must help to at a very young age increase the size of their world. Not just send to schools. A lot of parents are very focused, send a kid to school and they have to learn there, and they miss the whole other area. Is they're now part of them. Don't take them hiking. They don't like it, but that's part of the prepare them. You need to prepare your back. We're gonna go. We're gonna teach, because you want to take them to places where they're uncomfortable, but to do that, you must make yourself uncomfortable. Take them camping, because in the camping, everybody gets responsibility. We start making food on a fire. In fact, a lot of kids start loving that. But you create new experiences. And there's wonderful things, like in end of April, my wife and I go on another 4-day hike the Lost Coast, and there's a whole group, and there's young people that sometimes come with their parents, and so we carry our packs and heavy gear, 45 pounds. You set your tent up, you make food, but you got this most fantastic new experience. We actually did a 9-day across the Sierras in California once, and and that's where you really learn new things. So a lot of parents can start taking their kids on some of these camps or hikes, or just figure out what is new experiences. Don't just go. I'm not Disneyland, but don't just go to Disneyland where you just send them off. Oh, go take a ride, take that ride over and over. There's no new experience later on. They've done it over and over. It doesn't. It's a fun day, but it doesn't add to development. So parents should ask, what can I do with my kids that will help them to experience new things and increase their responsibility and the scope of their ability to function in this world? What can I do? Not just school. That's a given. Got to send them to school. That's part of it. But we look at the school to do these things for us. And the schools are saying, no, our job is just to teach them these things cognitively. And we can't do the rest. We don't have the time. We don't have the money. We have limited resources. Parents should look, and I know parents are busy. Sometimes they work very hard, 2 jobs. I do understand that.
Yeah.
But that is something to think about. And sometimes you can pair up with other parents to say, yeah, can my kid go with your kids to do this? So you're on the right track here with something very valuable.
Yeah, I think it can be very challenging to create awe and wonder in anyone these days, but going camping and seeing mountains and seeing oceans and seeing blue lakes and seeing 500-year-old trees, and then once you get rid of the light pollution of cities, you look up at the stars and you see the cosmos. Like, that is just some of the most awe-inspiring things that you can ever do, and it will viscerally change individuals. And I don't care how much they watch Instagram, they look up at the stars, they'll be changed. And it's an incredibly cheap way to connect human beings to something that's bigger than us, and it's all about.
And, for parents to listen, and I could throw it in here, I use a group in California, TSX Challenge. And this guy takes young people as a group out. If you can't do it yourself, you can send your kids with them. It's just, and it's safe. They do it all the time. That's one way of getting your kid out of this monotonous world that they often is. Send them with one of these groups to do something, or travel, as you say, to another country if you can. Wonderful, because new experiences just expand the mind.
Yeah.
And it forces you to adapt. And that's the kind of emotional growth that's necessary.
Beautifully said. And I'd love to finish up talking a little bit about nutrition and mental health and kids and our youth. And in preparation for this podcast and a few others this week, I've been reviewing some of the research papers done on nutritional deficiencies and mental health. And our flagship product here at Truehope Canada has 35 independent peer-reviewed medical journals to its name. And I was looking at one a couple of days ago in regards to using broad spectrum micronutrients in treating children with clinically diagnosed psychological disorders. And it's a very rare phenomenon because, you know, obviously within the scientific world, they want to look at one ingredient that's going to take care of anxiety or depression, etc. Because you can't patent natural organic material, and you certainly can't do it when we're talking about 36 ingredients in our product. You know, that's not how pharmaceutical companies make money, so they're not going to put up the money to research these things. But I was just reading through this 2010 study that was comparing micronutrients to medications for managing autism. And I know we've not talked about autism in this show, but we're talking about like a spectrum of psychological disorders. And you can certainly put anxiety and depression, loneliness, and all of those things within that. And this study in particular, which I'll actually put in the show notes for reference because it's quite remarkable. And this study found that using micronutrients, specifically Empower Plus in this case, reduced social withdrawal, it reduced anger, it reduced irritability, and it reduced SIB, which is like self-injurious behaviors. And I see all of those things, maybe not the SIB, but like I see all of those things. I see anger, I see social withdrawal, I see irritability. I see rage. I see all of these things with teens these days. So we're not talking about necessarily autism, but we're talking about a lot of things that teens experience. And when there's a bunch of schools, high schools in the area where I live, and my son and I, ironically talking about community, we go and pick up litter on Sundays outside this school because there's a bunch of houses where the kids, they'll go to 7-Eleven and they'll dump their Monster drinks and their 7-Eleven drinks. And me and my son, we go pick all that up on Sundays. And the absolute garbage that the kids are consuming throughout the day, whether it's these, you know, like almost a liter Monster drink, which is just caffeine and sugar and all these things. I can only imagine the nutritional state some of these children are in, and then they have to go sit down for 6 hours and try and focus and concentrate when all they've got running through their body is sugar and caffeine and processed food that's just like the body is in no way in a space to develop and thrive and feel energy in a natural state.
In fact, the use of these food often triggers these bouts of deep depression. Because remember, after eating a lot of carbohydrate processed food, you get a high, and very soon, within an hour, you get a very deep drop where you feel lethargic, you feel down, which if you struggle with mental health issues, that is not helping you in any way.
Yeah, exactly. And so what do you think about these deficiencies and how they might contribute to this growing sense of hopelessness and lack of motivation in today's youth? Because at the beginning of the beginning of the show, we were talking about, you know, how are kids right now in this space of hopelessness and loneliness. And I just think about the stages before they get there. And I think one of the stages to get to a state of loneliness and depression and anxiety has to be this nutritional lack where their body cannot produce the chemicals and energy it needs to make children feel the opposite of that, to feel together with people, to feel energized and motivated. They can't physically be in that state if their body is in a significant state of lack.
No, the whole idea is with food is sold incorrectly to people. Food is fuel. Food is not just food. And if you fuel yourself, if you fuel your car incorrectly, your car won't go. If you put the wrong fuel in your car, or you put no fuel in, or just water, and say the car's backing up, and we don't even understand, we don't want to educate people about what the connection is with fuel, mental health, food, and what to eat when. And so because we protect a whole fast food industry, and that's just processed carbohydrate foods. So they don't want to let kids understand the connection between what you eat can have a direct effect on your mood, can have a direct effect on your energy. If you have mental health issues, it can exacerbate if you're eating correctly. So diet is an incredibly, it's a whole other podcast just talking about mental health issues. Your mood and food is very important. I mean, they resist that, and it's parents' responsibility to realize that a lot of the issues that stem in the lethargy and the low energy has to do with the fact that the kid is just surrounded by
Mm.
these wasteful food that's just poor energy. So it's necessary. I like the idea. I looked into your products that you have. I think a lot of parents should go on your site and educate yourself. Educate about yourself about alternative medication, healthy, natural medication, because nobody is going to educate you if you don't do it yourself. Go on
That's
a
right.
site like yours, Truehope, look at the alternatives. I read your whole story. And that is often what happens is people go for medication. The medication is side effect. It's not working, and then they don't know what to do. And what we found now, young people now moving to cannabis, which is now legalized, which is the worst thing that could ever happen in this world. Newest study shows that it's increasing mental health issues, anxiety, and schizophrenia at a pace. But they go to that because it feels like it's helping immediately.
Hmm.
Parents should educate themselves about alternative ways, alternative medication, healthy options like yours, and then begin to experiment because nobody's going to do it for them. And often that is one of the helps for a young person that's really struggling is to get the right medication because like you guys are using very natural products in earth in our nature is the answer for what we want. You're just putting it together, and I think it's something to absolutely look into.
Yeah, great points there. And I think for a lot of parents who are concerned about their kids and they want to have a positive influence, I think they could actually start looking at maybe what they're doing and what they're not doing. Because if you go to like adults, we're talking about alcohol, we're talking about cannabis as well. We're certainly talking about sugar and caffeine. Like a lot of people are consuming these to get through the day, and a lot of these things are obviously very unhealthy. And I'd
Abs-
actually challenge a parent who knows their teenager consumes like monster caffeine drinks. Consume one of those at 9 o'clock and see how you function for a couple of
yeah,
hours.
yeah. See, Vincent,
I don't dare even try it because the
it's
size of
it's
this.
it's it's so unhealthy they can't actually even try it as an
For
experiment.
sure, and
It's so unhealthy.
the size of
Yeah,
the can puts me off because it's just like there's no
it's
you
terrible.
couldn't consume that much anyway.
Absolutely.
And even when you were to look at the quality of fruits and vegetables these days, our soil is massively mineral depleted. Therefore, it's very difficult to even with a natural healthy diet to get the right uh,
Absolutely.
minerals, antioxidants, vitamins that we actually need for our brain and bodies to function properly. So supplementation is a very key part to that. So I appreciate your comments there because I'm in a very lucky position where I get to see and hear the stories from
Yeah.
parents whose children were uh, erratic and bouncing off the
No,
walls, and
I think you do. I'm glad I got hold of the information now, because sometimes people ask us, well, where can we get information?
mm,
And although we cannot advise them about medication at all,
sure,
and outside the scope of my practice, I can tell them go online, look up stuff, educate yourself, go to this site, read, and see if that can work for you. Because that's the good thing about the internet is now
yeah,
we have access to a lot of information which we never had, but it's not always easy to find it because there's so much information.
yeah.
So to help people and point them and say, we go look at there are alternatives for medication and for mental health interventions. So that's a valuable resource.
Yeah, and I think just to finish up here, what I find remarkable about the human body is that it can put up with so much torture in regards to these foods that we're talking about, but
Yeah.
it can also completely reverse very, very quickly once you
Yes.
start thinking about, taking a good quality natural supplement that's been researched to support conditions such as ADHD, depression, anxiety,
Absolutely.
stress, anxiety, all of these things, and how quickly you can start to feel so much better and you become you don't you're no longer requiring these sugary caffeinated beverages
It's really
to get you
liberating.
through.
It's
It's really
people don't
liberating.
know. People don't know what is out there. They just struggle. Often they just caught up in this struggle, this
Yeah.
we this cycle which they kept in, and
Yeah.
so it's vital if they can get out of that.
Absolutely. And there's no human body can consume like a really poor diet, the one we're talking about, for long periods of time. So if you want
No.
to talk about like investing in your health and not having to deal with, high health costs, um, take advantage of what's available to you now and start using that. And I just wanted to I think it's important when you were talking about the use of cannabis with children, with teenagers. I completely agree with you. It's horrific for them. The part of the brain that actually connects with these substances and the chemicals within them is massively underdeveloped from 25 and under. So it really, really shocks me when I see 18, 19-year-olds using cannabis. And they're also using it recreationally, right? They're not using it for a medical
They
condition.
go up to 12, 16 times a day.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
see them in practice, and we say we can't even work with you. You got to go to a place where you're addicted, and
Mm.
they don't even know that.
Yeah, it's really, really dangerous, and
Yeah.
we've not been informed well enough from from governments about the dangers, especially towards children whose brains are not developed yet, and we're throwing in these toxic substances that are incredibly damaging. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really, really important point. I just kind of wanted to finish up on.
Okay.
We could certainly talk a lot more about
Yes. Thanks. It was great. It was
the
really great,
nutritional
Simon.
connection. Yeah, thank you so much. Can you just let us know where people can connect with you and learn more about your work, please?
Yes, absolutely. I started a YouTube channel, Restart, so you can look at that. It's in the makings. They'll get more of my material there because I'm dealing with a lot of young people who failed at 25 and they don't know where to go. And so showing them how to restart it because a lot of them say live around the word failure. I failed, which is a word we shouldn't even be using. There isn't something like failure.
Mm,
It's
I
just
agree.
you took a set of actions that didn't render the results you wanted. Now you have something to build on and to change. But we created the word failure as if now you're out, you can never start. So I'm focusing on that. They're welcome to look at that, or they can just email me personally at henryjventer@gmail.com, and you can just put it in your line there.
Yeah.
If they have a question, they're always welcome to follow up with me there.
Amazing. Well, I really appreciate your time today. There
Oh,
was
it's been a
some
delight, Simon. I loved it. I loved it, and I'm so excited. I found your material. I spent 2 hours this morning reading through everything, and I'll definitely be in touch myself.
beautiful. Thank you so much again. Well,
All right.
that is it for this episode of True Hope Cast, the official podcast of True Hope Canada. I'll make sure that everything you need to connect with Henry is in the show notes, and you can give us a little review on iTunes and Spotify if you want to. But that is it for this week. We'll see you soon.